A quick note before we begin. While Kelsey and Amanda enjoy debating for your entertainment, we want our listeners to know that Lit Vibes Only is an inclusive community that honors all tastes and respects all readers. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Lit Vibes Only, where we lit the shit out of books we love and hate. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Amanda, and we are back, y'all.
Hey.
It is time for another Lit It or Quit It episode. But before we get to that, want to remind you where to find us on socials. So you can check us out on Instagram at litvibesonly_podcast, TikTok at Lit Vibes Only Podcast, and the same for YouTube, Lit Vibes Only Podcast. And if you're feeling so inclined and want to send us an email, you can email us at litvibesonlypodcast@gmail.com. And we also want to remind folks that we still have our sticker giveaway going on. It is going to end on Friday, December 13th. So you've got about a month, a little under a month, to get those reviews and ratings in. As a reminder, how to do that, you are going to hop on wherever you listen to your podcast. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, another major podcast platform. You're going to rate us. You're going to write us a review if you're on Apple. You're going to rate us, and then you're going to leave us a positive review. Or if you're listening on Spotify, you're just going to leave a comment on the episode of your choice. You're going to want to screenshot that, and then you're going to send it to us on our socials, so TikTok or Instagram. You can email it to us once again at litvibesonlypodcast@gmail.com, and make sure to include your address, and then we're going to send you a sticker. And you're going to have a great day, and you're going to stick it somewhere amazing. And then you're going to take a photo, and you're going to tag us on socials, and we're going to celebrate together.
I feel like you got that down now.
I know, right? It only, what is this? This is our I lost track of what episode. Is this 8th, 9th? This is our,
I don't know.
I don't know either. Because we do
the 7th episode is coming up, but it's really 8.
No, this will be our 11th. This will be our 11th because next, because it's for a month. So this, and the last episode will be the 12th for, So this will be our 11th episode. Took us 11 and now we've got it down.
Seems like like it's been so long, but it really has not.
I think because we've been talking about doing this podcast well before we started, like 100%. 6 months before we started, if not longer. So this has been a long journey to get to this point. So that's probably feels like it's been a while. But we're so glad we're doing the thing and that you guys are here on this journey with us, building this Lit Vibes Only community. But yeah. How's your week been?
It was insane. So we are recording. What is this? The 3rd week of October?
What is today? October 20th. Yeah.
And so is it? Yeah.
I just checked my phone.
And there was some sort of like eclipse and full moon this last week. And I shit you not, like I felt it. So like when you work at a school or like a place that has a lot of people and energy, all of that comes together all at once. And it's like this stirring pot of like crazy shit's going to happen. So yeah, all week I was just like, oh my God, why?
Putting out fires.
Running around with my head cut off. What did you say?
I said putting out fires.
Yes, 100%. All week. So that was tough. Yeah.
Full moons at schools are like wild times, y'all. Like if you follow any teachers on socials, like there's always stuff going down when it's a full moon. My dad, he's a doctor, and he would also often talk about like at clinics and hospitals too, like full moons. It's just like
I can only imagine
things, right? People just come in and have done crazy things themselves, or like it's wild.
They're not, you believe in that. It just happens.
Yeah, it's not a matter of you believing it. It's just a fact, right?
Yeah. At least from my perspective, like I didn't even know anything was going on. And people were like, is it a full moon? I was like, I don't know. What does that mean? And after the fact that this entire week happened, I think it was yesterday, I was looking at a video where she was like, eclipse is now over. It's gonna get better. I was like, is that what it was? Yeah, so it was.
There's an eclipse and a full moon. So it's like doubly insane. Well, I definitely capped off the week by doing something like calming and de-stressing. I just had a facial this morning and it was lovely. I go to this woman down in Federal way. Her name
And we
is
go to the
Missy
same one.
McIntyre. Yes. And
Misty.
I recommended her to Kelsey. So now we both go to the same
Yeah.
person. If you're in the Seattle area and you need a good esthetician who will just like transform your skin, Missy McIntyre Aesthetics, highly,
Yeah.
highly recommend.
And we
So I had that
both
done.
like travel to her
Yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
she's in Federal Way. We both are in Seattle, but like
Yeah.
we travel to her
It's worth it.
happily.
Yeah,
Yes.
like it's like a half an hour drive for me from West Seattle. I'm like, yes, there nothing will
Hmm.
stop me from making the drive.
Yeah.
So that was really lovely. It was really lovely way to cap the week. But it was funny as I was lying there, you know how like when you're getting your facial, they like use
Uh-huh.
steam to like open up your pores.
Yes.
And my face really needed to just like get cleared out today. And
Uh-huh.
so she used the steam for like longer than normal. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, this reminds me of my like, not my phobia, but we were talking about this in a previous episode,
Oh,
how I like
yeah.
don't like hot, moist air and I feel like I can't breathe.
Oh my
I'm just
gosh.
sitting there like, oh, I just want this part to be over. It's always my least favorite part of a facial is the
Really?
steam. I'm just like, I know it's good and it's like helping to open up and clear my pores, but
Yeah.
it's like not pleasant for me at
I
all.
really like that part. I think I
Really?
told you one of my phobias was just like
The
air in
the
my
air,
face
yes. And for me, it's
because
just
it
hot,
feels
moist
like I
air.
can't breathe. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the mist feels different to me. I don't know what it is.
Really?
Yeah, it
It's just
just
like
like
the
feels
air
like
is
it's like
so like heavy. It's like it doesn't get into your lungs easily. And I don't know. I between so my two least favorite things for
uh,
facials are the steam and
uh-huh.
the extractions, obviously. Like nobody likes
Oh, that
extractions.
hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my like least favorite things. But other than that, I love going to get facials. I did a
Yes.
peel. I did a peel today.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, I feel
No,
good.
yeah, I haven't been able to get a facial since I got my eyebrows done. I got my touch up this weekend. You have to wait 4 weeks after the first appointment. So
Mm-hmm.
I got this done back in the end of September, the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back yesterday, and that's why they're so dark. And I won't be able to get a facial for like 3 or 4 more weeks.
Oh God,
And
that's
so
awful. It's like
I've,
2 months with no
yeah.
facial.
And
Also,
so
God.
with her membership, like I think I'm gonna gift one to Cesario and see how he likes it. That's my
Oh
husband.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
bet he would. They're
Oh
so
yeah.
relaxing. She's so amazing. She's a miracle
So
worker.
nice. Yeah.
And also for folks who don't know, like you got your eyebrows tattooed. Like that's what you were
Yes.
referring
They're
to.
ombre.
Yeah.
They're ombre.
What's the difference? Because when you were talking about it yesterday, I was like, I don't, what's the difference between getting it tattooed and ombre? Or is it the
So
same?
ombre is a form of a tattoo,
Oh,
but it's more shading than the tick marks that you get. Ombre makes it really look like a natural like eyebrow
okay.
rather than like hairs. Yeah. It just
Okay.
looks more filled
Okay.
in my perspective. And then
Okay.
this fades and then it looks super natural. I really like it.
Okay. I'm letting Kelsey try this out and then I'm gonna see how it is and then maybe I'll do the same because I hate doing my
Yeah,
eyebrows
yeah.
every day. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
And
So
my
it
eyebrows are not.
basically like looks like how you do your eyebrows, but like
Mm-hmm.
softer, I think,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Well, I'm gonna keep an eye over the next couple of weeks and
Okay.
see. Like your eyebrows always look great, so I'm
So
excited.
excuse us for the long intro because
Actually,
we
honestly, I feel like this is one of our shorter intros.
really, I thought it was going
Yeah.
on.
I feel like there are some where we've like told stories and like the one
Uh,
with the spider and like the
oh
whole thing with Taylor
yeah,
Swift and
I'm
all the concerts. Like
sure.
I feel like sometimes we go on. But before we get to like the episode, I want to know what you're reading.
Oh yeah. So I am currently in an audiobook that I had to return this
Oh
morning
no.
and I hadn't finished it, but I am honestly not that sad about it. It's called The Atlas Complex.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Oh, you've mentioned the series
yeah,
before a couple
so
times,
this
yeah.
series, I think honestly it's too dense for me being in the minds of these people.
Mm.
The other thing too, I think it's really smart writing, but
Hmm.
like it might have been too smart. Like, it's so confusing because there's so many little details you're supposed to pick up on and
Hmm.
nuances.
Hmm.
I am not great at that. And especially with an audiobook, it's
Oh
hard
yeah.
to like, oh, did he say that? Does that mean that she's dying? Like, there's just like all of these nuances in the
Hmm.
book. I never
Hmm.
know where people stand. I never know like why they're making the decisions they're making. Like it's interesting, but like I don't know.
It's not your
it's
vibe.
not my favorite.
Okay. Okay,
The
that's
first,
fair.
yeah. So it's the end of the series. I have like an hour and a half left. And so
Okay.
I will get that finished in like 5 weeks because that's when I will get it back.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, I'm not, as we all know, I'm not an auditory processor, and it's why I don't
Mm-hmm.
listen to audiobooks generally. Even more so if it's like a dense, complex book. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to track at all. So
I
that
think I
sounds really
found my limit.
challenging. Like if it's an easy read or like something
Yeah.
that's just like purely for entertainment, I feel like I could do that with an audiobook, but anything like deep, complex, nuanced, I would be so lost. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently reading our book club book for October/November. We're actually meeting at the beginning of November
Mm-hmm.
since we couldn't find a good week in October. But we're reading
No.
In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And
Mm.
it's, I'm only 30 pages in and it's so fascinating so far. So she is a bi woman who was in an abusive relationship with another woman. And so it explores this really
Mm.
interesting topic of domestic violence, but within a same sex relationship that
Mm.
you don't
Mm-hmm.
really hear about or read
Yeah.
about often. And so that
Wow.
instantly really grabbed my attention. And then the way that the
Yeah.
book is set up is so cool. Like, I know this is something that we differ on where like I'm really into the writing and
Uh-huh.
like writing styles and things. It's because again, that's something that I studied. And so
Uh-huh.
what she does is each chapter of the
Uh-huh.
book is a different narrative trope. So one chapter is like Bildungsroman. I don't think I'm saying that correctly, but which is just like a coming of age story. And
Okay.
like one chapter is set up as like kind of this extended metaphor and like just like different narrative tropes. And each chapter, there's like a ton of chapters, is set up differently.
Hmm.
And it's really cool. It's just like she's playing around with all of these different narrative tropes and conventions. And again, as
Yeah.
someone who's really into writing, the craft of writing, it's very cool.
I mean, that sounds cool. I'm curious about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I will keep you posted. It's definitely a text that is unlike any I've encountered. I've certainly never read a memoir that is written this
Oh, it's a
way. It's
memoir.
a memoir, sorry. Yeah, it's a memoir. So it's recounting this abusive
Oh.
relationship that she had. I'm excited to like dive into it some more and then I'm sure it'll make for a great discussion as well. So that's what I'm reading right now.
And just so
But
everybody knows, Amanda's book club is outside of this book club. It's
yes,
a completely separate entity.
this is not our Lit Vibes Only book club.
Yeah.
That's another one I've been a part of for a while. But yeah, okay, so let's get to it. Let's get
What
to the
book did we
book.
read this month?
I had Kelsey read Verity by Colleen Hoover. And I want to
Mhm.
take a moment really quickly and tell everyone why I chose this book
Yes,
for
please.
Kelsey. So, one reason, as I'm thinking about books, is like I want it to be a fairly well known book because I know as listeners, it's much more fun to listen to an episode with a book or an author that you're
Hmm.
familiar with versus something that's more obscure. So, I know this book has been around for a while. It was like a bestseller, and a lot of folks are, again, familiar with it. So, that was one reason why I chose it. The second reason why I chose it is because I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed it specifically because it does a lot of things that thrillers do and it does them really well.
Mm.
And I wanted Kelsey to, again, experience a thriller that puts you on the edge of your seat, that leaves you guessing, that has like a lot of uncertainty in it, that is really twisty, that gives you that big gasp at the end, like
Yeah.
all of the elements that like make a good thriller good. And I feel like this
Uh-huh.
book does that. And then
Mm.
the last reason I chose it is I feel like up to this point, I think most people are like, oh, Kelsey likes reading for entertainment and maybe Amanda likes reading more for like good writing. But I also really love reading for entertainment. And for me, like,
Good to know.
this is the kind of entertainment that I like. Like when I just want like kind of an engaging, fun read, this is the kind of book I gravitate towards. And even though the writing's not
Interesting.
spectacular, I did not
Uh-huh.
care because I was so taken in by this bizarre, wild, twisty plot and characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's why I chose it. And I'm so eager to see Kelsey. Short answer was this a lit it or quit it for you?
Oh, I think you were surprised because I actually liked this one.
Yay.
And so it is a lit it for me.
Finally. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I won't I won't ask any follow-up questions because we're gonna get into it.
Okay.
So why don't we start with a summary, as always,
Mhm.
for folks who either haven't read it in a while or haven't read it at all? What's this book all about?
Okay. Whew. Here we go with another summary. Okay. I literally just finished it 2 nights ago. So it's very fresh in my memory.
Hmm.
So the main characters are Lowen, who is an up and coming writer, Jeremy, who is the husband of Verity, who is a very famous author and writer. And then I guess you should mention their child, Crew. He's a young boy. I think he's like 5 or something. He's really young. Okay. So Lowen, at the very beginning of the book, she like witnesses someone dying, and it's very graphic and gross. And this is actually how she meets Jeremy. He gives her his shirt so that she can get rid of the shirt that has like all the blood and guts on her. It's gross. And then Lowen is on her way to a meeting with her book publisher or agent. And they're offering her a position in completing the series that Verity could not complete. There are 3 more books in her series that need finishing, and these people are willing to pay her to do that. The reason why Verity is unable to finish them is because she was recently in an accident that has left her. We don't really understand what, but it alludes to brain, like she has brain damage and is completely bedridden, but she is alive. And so she accepts the offer. And then the other thing about Lowen is like she's really broke and needs a place to stay. So she ends up staying in the house where Verity is being taken care of. Nurses come in and out, and Jeremy lives there and Crew lives there. And so the reason why she's at the house is because all of Verity's work is and her notes are there at the house. And so she's trying to piece together the story to see where Verity envisioned like the next 3 books going. And while she's doing this, she finds a manuscript from Verity, and it is dark and twisted and really kind of psychotic. And Lowen can't put it down. And this is kind of what gets her in trouble. She starts reading this and feeling like Verity is a psychopath because in her manuscript, she's detailing how obsessed she is with Jeremy and their sex life while also having children and hating the children, not having a motherly connection to them. And so initially, Verity and Jeremy had twins, and that's kind of known in the book because those twins have died. And so they died at different times. They were like 8, I think, and they died in different ways separately, but like about 6 months apart or something. Similar to that. Verity is describing like in this manuscript that she one really grows an attachment to one of the twins. I don't even know how to pronounce the name. Do you know, Amanda?
I think Chastain. I
Chastain?
don't know how. I've n-
Yeah, it
I always
was
pronounce Amanda
interesting
Chastain, but I don't know if
names
that's right.
where she grows fond of her and then has a dream when she's younger that her sister, Harper, is going to kill her. And so Verity kind of gets it in her head, at least in this manuscript, that Harper is going to kill Chastain. And so she kind of plays along that. And eventually, at one point in the manuscript, she details like that she tried to kill Harper by choking her and putting her fingers down her throat, but was caught by Jeremy and so couldn't succeed. And then at some point, Chastain dies. Chastain had a really bad peanut allergy, and they think that's how she died. It's not like for certain whether or not this is true. And then somewhere along the way, Lowen is like falling for Jeremy and like thinking like, oh, he's had such a hard life. He's lost 2 of his daughters. Verity was fucked up and a psychopath. And so she's kind of like beginning to be interested in him. Along the way, while she's reading the manuscript, she kind of gets these insights that Verity is possibly faking it. And so at one point, Verity is standing and staring at her through the windows, and she gets really creeped out. She's like, okay, she's not staring at me. And she like kind of talks herself out of it. But then there are several other times where she's talking to Crew, the 5-year-old, and he says, Mom doesn't want me to talk to you or talk to you about specific things. And so things like that come up, and she's like confused about how this is possible, but gets really creeped out, like being in the house with Verity. At some point, Jeremy and Lowen do hook up, but again, she's frightened of Verity because she sees her at the top of the stairs in the house, but Jeremy doesn't see her. And so eventually, Lowen shows the manuscript to Jeremy and he says, Where did you get that? And then goes upstairs and then some noise is made. It sounds like he's crying or screaming. Lowen goes upstairs and finds him in Verity's room. And Verity is like on the bed partially, but not fully. And so it still looks like she's brain dead. But then Jeremy tries to wake her up and is like, Are you faking? Like, I have this manuscript and I will turn it into the police because it outlines like the fact that Verity killed Harper. So Verity wakes up and is like begging for her life and is like, I'm sorry, like there was no other way. She tries to explain things away. And then Jeremy is like choking her. And then Lowen is like, don't do it, don't do it. And her reasoning wasn't because you don't want to kill her. It's because his hand marks and his handprints would be all over her neck. They would know how she died. And then Lowen takes a minute to think about it and says, if you make her throw up, it'll look like an accident and like just have her choke on her vomit essentially. And so they do that and Verity dies. So then we're at the point where it's like wrapping up, but Lowen ends up pregnant by Jeremy from like one of the only times that they had sex while she was in the house. They sell that house that Verity, Jeremy, and Crew were living in, their family. And Lowen finds like a loose floorboard where some
Mm-hmm.
things were kept. There
Mm-hmm.
was like a knife, but then more importantly, there was this letter that Verity wrote. And this is the ending of the book where she details like how the manuscript wasn't real and how she didn't kill Harper and
Mm-hmm.
that she loved their children and that she wasn't obsessed with him or with sex. And it was interesting because it makes you believe then that none of the manuscript is true, right? And kind of places the blame on Jeremy versus Verity. And so you're left wondering, well, what the fuck happened? And then Jeremy and Lowen end up having their daughter, and they're kind of like happily, almost like it's happily ever after. It's a weird
Yeah.
ending. And so I guess there is an epilogue though. And
Yeah.
so I haven't fully read it. So Amanda, do you want to detail us in on that
Sure,
portion?
I'll try. So, yeah, the epilogue came out after the book was published. And really quick note before I summarize the epilogue is that in that letter that Kelsey just referenced, Verity says that she wrote that manuscript, that
Oh
really kind
yeah.
of horrifying manuscript, as a writing exercise because all of the books that Verity has written are from the perspective of villains. And so she was
Mm-hmm.
writing this whole manuscript as a way to kind of get inside the head of like a villain and also to process. She was using it as, I think, a way to process her grief at losing her children as well. So just a
Mm-hmm.
quick note there. So the epilogue picks up several months after Jeremy and Lowen's daughter is born, Nova. And, they're in North Carolina, they're in a new home, and Lowen is still struggling with guilt and feelings around the death of Verity, and also this insecurity that she isn't quite measuring up to how Verity was as a wife to Jeremy. And so she's always comparing, how they looked and how Jeremy feels about her. And so she's kind of scrutinizing every little detail. So there's a lot of insecurity on Lowen's part. And like I said, perhaps some lingering guilt. So Crew is also not thrilled about having his baby sister. He's pretty
Mm-hmm.
nonchalant and apathetic toward her, which is demonstrated several times, including at one point near the end of the epilogue where he takes his baby sister, like leaves her outside. And again, she's just like several months old. But the thing that's most chilling about the epilogue is that they go to the beach one day. They go to like a secluded area because a lot of people don't know that they're together now, that they have a child. They've kind of tried to keep it under wraps because it does look a little problematic. And they run into a woman named Patricia who is from the earlier part of the story. And she knew Jeremy, she knew Verity, and I believe they were
Mm.
neighbors in Vermont. So she's like, oh, wait a minute. Now you and Lowen are together. You have this baby. And you can tell that she's like upset and confused about this dynamic happening in
Mm.
the wake of Verity's death. And so Jeremy ends up killing her. He drowns her in the ocean. He like sends
Oh, killing
Lowen
is,
and
oh my God.
yeah, he sends Lowen and crew back to the car and he's like, I'll be there in a moment. And he kills Patricia and lets, Lowen know later that that's what he did. He's like, I did it for us. I did it to protect us. And the epilogue kind of
Jeez.
ends with Lowen realizing like they're never going to be able to have like a normal happily ever after, as you mentioned. So it's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild, dark, weird, twisty, bizarre book, which is why I
I
love it.
guess that honestly, that makes sense to me though, because you can't kill someone and then not feel anything about it.
I think that like brings up, because I always get them confused. I always get the traits between a sociopath and a psychopath mixed, but
Mm, oh
that
yeah, I
lack
don't
of
know.
remorse and that lack of feeling of that
Yeah.
lack of guilt, like if
Mm,
Jeremy does fall into one of those categories, apologies, listeners, I don't remember which is which, then might make sense why he doesn't have any issues doing it
mm.
again. But also, when humans feel like they have no other options and are backed into a corner, we often act in really horrible, problematic ways. Okay, but before we get to
Mm.
that, we always want to start on a positive note. And I have a feeling you'll have hopefully several good things to say about this book since you liked it. But yeah, what were some positives from the book that stood out to you that you were like, oh yeah, this is why I like this book?
It's funny because I kept thinking about none of this is true and like
Mm-hmm.
why I didn't like none of this is true.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I saw like they're not crazy different. Like, yeah, they were different plots and everything. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
crazy different. So I was just like, what makes this one better? I was like,
Yeah,
I don't
curious.
even have an answer for it. But I liked how creepy it was. And that's something that wasn't in none of this is true. But I liked how you question things and Verity, like her actually faking was part of the story I liked because it
Mhm.
was creepy to me.
Okay. Okay. So you
Um,
liked the creepy element.
yes.
Okay.
And even like we didn't outline this in the summary, but like Crew is even like pretty
Mm-hmm.
creepy himself
Mm-hmm.
because how can you not be from a product of these two parents, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, and then also living in this house with your mother and dad, and
Mm-hmm.
you have two sisters that died, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to affect you.
Mm-hmm.
At one point he's like biting on a knife, letting it cut him, his
Mm-hmm.
mouth, and I think tongue, and it was just like an intense like moment where it's like, fuck, what is wrong with this kid?
Mm-hmm. It's disturbing.
It is disturbing. Yeah. So those are
Okay.
some of the things I liked.
It's so funny because I hear you saying like, "Oh, it was disturbing. It was creepy." Like these characters, and like I feel like those are all things that you didn't like.
It wasn't
None of this
even
is
like,
true.
I just felt like none of this is true. Like I wasn't interested in the characters, is how I remember
Okay.
it. And Josie was not creepy to me. She was just like, ugh.
Okay.
I just immediately did not like her or Alex. And I remember Alex, her decisions not making sense.
Sure.
And sure, like, but those were like stupid decisions. These are like, oh, everyone's a psychopath, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, I could see that. So I don't know.
Okay.
So I feel like, and none of this is true. It was still trying to like make Alex like the good person, but
Mm.
I didn't see that. So yeah. Anyway, I don't
Yeah, no,
know.
that makes sense because I think every character in this book, kind of similar to none of this is true, is that like there's no hero. Like everyone in
Yeah.
some way or another is a villain or problematic or making, yeah, choices that most folks wouldn't agree with or would find alarming. So,
Mm-hmm.
including, like you said, including the child. Even he
Yeah.
was not separate from that. He's involved in one way or another. So, which is interesting, yeah, because I think none of this is true. That's similar. Like they're not supposed to be likable. You're not supposed to be rooting
Mm-hmm.
for anyone, even though I think, yeah, to your point, you felt like Alex was supposed to be like the likable protagonist.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to believe anyone, and none of this is true. And I feel like it's the same thing
Uh-huh.
here. Like you're not supposed to be like, oh yes, this person's version of events is absolutely what happened and is factual. So
Uh,
interesting that you had a different viewpoint.
yeah, I
Glad
don't
you
know.
glad you liked
It's
it.
it's interesting. But yeah, I feel like in this episode we can kind of get more into like theories and like what we think of like the characters
Sure.
and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is your take on Lowen?
Oh, my take on Lo. So the thing with Loan that's weird is because they start off the book, like you said, she witnesses kind of this really horrible car accident where like someone
Mm-hmm.
gets hit by a car and again, like
Yeah.
blood and guts are all over her. She was
Smushed.
right there, but
Yeah.
she doesn't have much of a reaction to it, which I
Yeah.
think is telling.
Yes.
And again, gives me pause. I'm like, okay, is this someone who does not process emotions in the way that most quote unquote normal humans would? She
Mm-hmm.
also has this whole thing with sleepwalking. And,
Mm-hmm.
people can do things when they're sleepwalking that they're not always cognizant of, obviously. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think they like let us know those things about Lowen's character, or Colleen Hoover let us know those things right off the bat to instantly maybe hint at the fact that she's not the most
Well.
reliable narrator. And so I don't trust Lowen,
Mm.
and the fact that she was the one at the very end who helped kill Verity in a way that would make
Without
sure,
pause.
yeah, without pause, that would make sure Jeremy got away with it. Like,
Yeah.
I think she is missing something fundamental in her makeup. And so
Yes.
that's so I don't know that I have a theory about her, but that's like my
And also part of the story is that her mother just died like not
hmm
long ago.
yeah.
So that's part of it too. It's like she is living in grief or maybe not
Yeah.
because she was like what relieved that her mom was dead
Hmm.
because she had been taking care of her for so long in her
Yes.
home. So
Yes.
there's all those things.
My theory was because I don't again, it's been a couple years since I read the book, but my theory, I think originally
Mm.
when I was reading was like, did she have a hand in her mom's
Oh.
death? Like at
Mm-hmm.
all? I just remember like having that ping ponging around in my head while I was reading.
Yeah. Well, especially what she does to Verity, like it's very
Exactly.
possible.
Yeah. That's why I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Oh, she thought about this before because it
Yeah.
takes her seconds to come up with how to kill her.
Literally. And like, what other person is going to be like, oh, this is how you kill someone in this moment, in this way? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
without pause.
What's your take on Jeremy?
So I think I'll say what my like overall theory is. Like, if we're looking for like a villain or the villain, I
Uh-huh.
do think it's Jeremy. And one of the reasons why I think that is because
Hmm.
Colleen Hoover felt the need to go back and write an epilogue where Jeremy on his own is out like murdering folks without anyone else's input. So this time it's not even like Lowen encouraging him along or helping him do the deed. Like
Yeah.
this is something he chose to do on his own. And I
Hmm.
felt that since she created this epilogue, that really the whole point of it, I think, well, one of the points of it was to show Jeremy doing this,
Mm.
was a way
Hmm.
for her to signal to us as the reader, like, yeah, he has been the bad guy perhaps all along. So that's my take on Jeremy. And I think the fact that he was so like kind and generous and chivalrous right at
Hmm.
the like from the get-go, right? With like
Hmm.
Lowen, it felt so performative. It felt like an act to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he was overcompensating in some way to make it
Mm.
seem like he's like this great guy. And that like
Hmm.
set off alarm bells for me. So what did you think about Jeremy? Like, what was your take on him?
Yeah. Yeah. He was definitely sus. For one, he was like willing to like cheat on his wife in the same house that his wife is like supposedly dying in. Like
Mm-hmm.
those are questionable choices. But also the fact that he reveals that he knew Lowen before she came to before that meeting is questionable too. So like, was
Yeah.
he seeking her out? Was he like, this is my next
Mm-hmm.
Verity? Like
Mm-hmm.
that creeped me out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that
Yeah.
reminds me because there's a moment in the epilogue too where he and Lowen are like lying in bed and
Uh-huh.
she looks over and sees that he's reading a book by
Yeah.
another female author. And it's like the second book he's read of hers in like a month or something. And like she's really beautiful. And she starts
Uh-huh.
to feel this sense of unease, like, oh no, it was like
Yeah.
this his next mark. So I
So,
found him overall very untrustworthy.
oh, definitely. His motives, I think, around everything were questionable. And then the other thing that I found interesting was the fact that I think he knew about the manuscript before Lowen gave it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was he doing upstairs? Like when he was crying slash screaming or something, like it wasn't new information to him. He already knew this.
So yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because, and again, I might need a quick refresher. So my understanding is like, yes, he'd seen the manuscript before, and
Yeah.
I thought that was the reason why he tried to kill Verity originally in the accent was because he thought that the manuscript was true and that
Right.
she had tried or had killed, right? Harper, and that was
Uh-huh.
why he was trying to like off her. Is that
Yeah. So,
okay?
well, we don't know if that's what happened, right? We don't know
Okay.
if
Yeah.
Jeremy did actually do that because also there's like a plot hole there because you would be able to tell what side Verity was on when the car crashed because Verity says like Jeremy was driving, but then he
Mm-hmm.
just put me in the driver's seat to make it
Mm-hmm.
look like I was driving. Like
Mm-hmm.
if the dent is on the passenger side, then her injuries would reflect that impact rather than from the driver's side. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
Well, wouldn't it depend on where the car was hit? I don't remember the
I
details. Was
think
it
it
hit on
was
the
the
side? Was it
side of the
T-boned or was it a
side of
full
the
like head on?
tree. Oh, I guess I don't know, but like
Because if it was a head on collision, it probably would roughly look the same injury wise.
but he just walked away from it.
Yeah.
So I imagined that it was like from the side on her side,
Mm,
you know? So I guess we
yeah.
don't know,
We do. Yeah, we guess we
but
don't
it's
know.
questionable as whether or not we don't know if Jeremy actually did that.
Right. But I think it also makes sense if depending on the theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, at the end and in the letter that she writes to Jeremy that Lowen finds,
Yeah.
Verity has been faking being in this vegetative state because she's scared of
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy and she's
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out a way to get the funds that she needs so she and crew can escape. And
Mm-hmm.
if you take that as the truth, then clearly like Jeremy sought to harm her
Mm-hmm.
based on this manuscript that he is violent, she is in fear for
Mm-hmm.
her life. Because I mean, the other thing is like, who would go to such great lengths to pretend to be in a vegetative state for so long, which is incredibly hard to do,
Yes. A
unless
crazy
your
person.
life wasn't. Oh, yeah, yeah. So it could be either it's because your
Either
life is in
one.
danger or because like, yeah, there is something not quite right
Mm-hmm.
upstairs. So it depends on like which like what do you think?
Yeah.
Like which side are you on?
I've been on since I finished it. I've been on
Mhm.
like because they say team manuscript or letter.
Mhm,
I'm more
mhm.
on the manuscript team.
Oh,
Um
interesting.
and yeah, so that would mean like there's serious things up with Verity. If it wasn't true,
Uh-huh.
wouldn't Jeremy find holes in it because he's the other main character in the manuscript, right? Like all of their sexual encounters, the way that sex was, like those kinds of things.
So I'm team letter, and
Interesting.
I think that the manuscript is part fact and part fiction. And so I
Okay.
think like some of
Yeah,
it
I
is
mean
true.
it
Like
could
they're,
be. Yeah.
yeah, like some of their like sexual encounters, et cetera, are true. So like that wouldn't, set off any alarm bells or confusion in Jeremy's mind.
I there was one more point that I wanted
Okay.
to make was that
Okay.
it was because she had started or initiated sex with him like not long after she had the two girls.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like staying away from her, right? Because he didn't want to like hurt her or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of seduces him in a way. And then they
Mm-hmm.
have sex. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, how else can you explain that other than like her viewpoint in it? So that actually happened. If he read the script and believed it all, because he believed she killed Harper, right? That wouldn't that set off alarm bells if that wasn't fully true? Because he didn't want to have sex. And that's what she said. If he didn't want to have sex, and if that wasn't the truth,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't he find this manuscript is not true? Like, you do know what I mean? Wouldn't that be his indicator? Like, oh, this isn't real.
And so he wouldn't have hurt her.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that she killed Harper because he's like, oh, these other details though aren't real. So this doesn't
Okay.
make sense. You know,
Okay.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Okay. But I think, yeah. So on Team Letter, then I think it is a mix of fact and fiction. And because of that, like he's going to like know the parts and recognize the parts that are true and then assume the rest is also then true, even though it's fiction. Because one of the reasons, wait, you're looking at
Hmm.
me strangely.
I don't, but if so,
Like, so I think in summary is that you think the entire manuscript is 100% true. And
yeah.
I think it's only partially true. I think
Uh-huh.
the parts about their like, like their sexual encounters, et cetera, are true. I don't think the parts about her murdering her daughter is true. I don't think the feelings that she had about her children are true outside of maybe some like postpartum depression or intrusive thoughts that women can have after
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like another reason why she wrote the manuscript is like, let me process these. Like I've never had a kid, but I know from other women who have like intrusive thoughts can be a symptom after you
Yeah.
give birth, and they can
Mm-hmm.
be really dark. Some
No,
of those
yeah, I've
intrusive
heard that.
thoughts.
Yeah.
And as a
Mm-hmm.
writer, I could see her again using this as an exercise to process those feelings and having it be really cathartic, even more so because she already is a writer who writes villains. So to me, I think it was more of like a writing exercise and a way to process these feelings as these different things are happening in her life. Because here's the reason why I'm
Mm-hmm.
Team Letter. One big reason. If she did, in fact, kill her daughter in this way, I don't think she's that stupid that she would write it out. Like you're literally
Maybe.
writing out confession to murder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in a place that wasn't that hard to find, right? Like Lowen did not have a super difficult time finding this manuscript. And I
Sure.
just I don't think Verity's an idiot. And I don't think she would write out this confession and then essentially leave it lying around for
Well,
someone to turn it in.
according to the manuscript, she was planning on killing herself. So she's like, why not leave it
Yeah,
around?
but so I still think it supports my side because I think the fact
I
that
don't.
she is struggling with grief over the loss of her
Mm-hmm.
daughters, the fact again that she it sounds like had a pretty potentially um from my perspective, right, rough time
Mm-hmm.
postpartum. Like I think if you had two of your children die, like and you loved them, right? So we're operating
Mm-hmm.
from the assumption that she was a loving, warm mother. Like a lot of people have gotten to a really dark place and would consider taking their own lives after the death of
Mm-hmm.
their children. And sadly, some people have. So I don't think that's like a huge
But
stretch.
the other thing is that if it wasn't at all true, wouldn't you go to the lengths of making sure people knew that? Like with
So,
her editor and
mm-hmm.
making sure like her editor knew this and like that it existed and that there
Mm,
would be like something on the front saying like
mm,
this is a
no.
exercise.
I
Yeah,
don't.
I
I
think
mean, I
so.
I can see that, and I know that I've seen that written in people's like critiques of
Yeah.
the book. Like, why wouldn't you label? But again, like I have a journal, right? I've kept journals for a really long time, and there are no like, and again, it's in a journal, so people just assume like, okay, this doesn't need a label. I guess she had hers, it was typed up, but like,
Hmm.
y- you would never think to label something that's personal, that's like a personal project, if it's just for you.
But wasn't it what it did have a title, didn't
It
it?
did. It was called
What
like
was the
"So Be It," I think, or something.
so be it.
Yeah.
I'm
So
trying to I'm trying to hear you out, Amanda, but I just
no,
feel
I know
like
it's
there's
okay.
so
Like
many
I like
holes.
I like that we're on opposite sides as always. And I certainly
Uh,
have been swayed back and forth multiple times. So I'm not like
yeah.
firmly, yes, absolutely team letter.
And
Like
same.
that's
Yeah.
the whole point of this book is like you're left wondering what is what. And that's what I love
Yeah.
about thrillers. Like they really mess with you. And like I read this book years ago and I still
Uh-huh.
think about it. And I'm still like, which is why I had you read it. Like it stuck with
Yeah.
And a
So
lot
I
of books
guess
don't.
I want to put this in the chat.
Okay.
Is because I was reading or watching videos around this book, like
Mm-hmm.
people's theories and people's like takes on it. The other thing I saw was an interview with Colleen Hoover,
Mm-hmm.
and they were asking her about Verity.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, like, her last like line was something like, I I did always think Verity was like fucked up, essentially. Like, I can't remember the words that
Mm-hmm.
she was saying, because if the letter is true,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, then Verity was kind of this normal person,
Mm-hmm.
more normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the intention was that like Verity was creepy, and which is like why all of these three characters like are attracted to each other, because in
Mm-hmm.
some way they're
Mm-hmm.
all like fucked up and like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
grieving or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, I totally can see that. And I remember reading some folks who were like, if she was, again, we'll use normal very loosely, quote unquote, a normal person, whatever that
Yeah, yeah,
means,
yeah.
you wouldn't ever write the things that she wrote about your children, even if it was a writing exercise, even if it was just
Mm-hmm.
fiction, even if you're just processing, like you would just never commit those words to paper because
Mm.
they're so horrifying and horrible. And I know some folks on Team like Manuscript will say that. And one of the reasons why I like thrillers, we've talked about this before, is because
Mm-hmm.
the characters are, to use your word, really fucked up and are deviating from
Mm-hmm.
the norm and deviating from what we've deemed as like appropriate behaviors for
Mm-hmm.
society. And I like that. So I also very much am okay with the idea of the manuscript being true,
Yeah.
because it does make it that much creepier and twistier.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, very much falls in line with like the thriller genre, because
Yeah.
thrillers do explore, like I've talked about before, like the dark side of human nature and like the weird,
Mm-hmm.
twisty places our minds can go and the actions that can then take place because of it. So I'm also okay with that. Like too, if that is in fact what she wanted.
I I
Yeah.
like how in the end, if the letter is not true, it also points to this idea that Verity wanted to go out with a bang a bit. And I feel like it could have also been a way to fuck with what's her name? Because
Lowen.
Verity, yeah, Lowen, Verity knew that she saw her like on her hands and knees a day before she was killed, I think. But anyway, so she knew that Lowen saw her on her hands and knees. And so I feel like the letter could have been planted for Lowen specifically by Verity to
Mm.
make her question what the fuck was going
Mm.
on.
Oh, I
So that's
like
another
that. So the
possibility.
letter was written like really recently and after Lowen had
Yeah.
shown up at the house
Mm-hmm.
in the hopes that perhaps, yeah, she would find it and would mess with it. Ooh,
I
yeah.
know. Isn't that psychotic?
Yeah. Well, because again, like to your earlier point, anyone who's willing to kind of commit to the bit, and in other words, be in this fake vegetative state
Yeah.
for so long,
Yeah.
that is not something that most human beings would do, would think to do, would be able to maintain for that long.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, again, leads to the conclusion that there's something really off with Verity. It's a really strong piece of evidence for Team Manuscript.
Yeah.
Again, not really sure what the reason behind that would be, though.
Reason
Like,
behind what?
of her deciding to be in a vegetative state for that long, because I can kind of
Yeah.
buy it if she's doing it for safety. Like, I'm so
Mhm.
terrified for my life and this is
Mhm.
the only option I have. Okay, fine. What other reason though? With if you take that off the table,
Mhm.
if you're Team Manuscript, then what other reason would cause someone to make that choice and then
Yeah, it's a good
being it
point.
for so I can't think of
Mhm.
one. And I don't think there's a reason presented in the book either that
Mm-mm.
supports that.
I wonder how long
So.
she was faking though. We don't really get insight to that.
No, because I don't, again, it's been a while. I don't know what the
Unless the
timing
letter
was with
is
her.
true, right? And she said she was still in the hospital and Jeremy saw her like staring into
Mm-hmm.
nothingness. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where she decided to,
Fake it.
yeah. Yeah.
And how long ago was that though? Do you remember the timing? Like between that and then Lowen showing up?
I don't remember. I think it might have said it in the book, but
Because I
I
can't
can't
remember.
remember.
I know it's been at least minimum months.
No,
Like
yeah.
For
I don't think
sure.
it's been years
No, I don't
because
think so
Crew
either.
is still like only
Quite young.
5
Yeah.
and his sisters were 8. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, overall, I'm just glad that you enjoyed it and that you're invested enough in it to like have theories about it and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
want to unpack it because I think that's the sign of a good book that you want to talk about it, that you
Sure.
have questions, that it's something you're thinking about like long after you finished. So I'm glad like this was a much better experience for you than
Whew.
none of this is true. Are there any
It
other
definitely
like
was.
final like thoughts or things that came up for you while you were reading that you want to
I
share
think
before we move on
that
to our
in general, I think mystery thriller is like
Mhm.
a genre I could get into. It just
Okay.
has to be it just has to be well done. And I need to be surprised
Oh yeah, for
by
sure. For sure. That's
it.
like
I didn't feel surprised. I feel like that's why I didn't feel surprised by none of this is true. I was like,
you did
yeah,
say
everyone's
that.
like awful. Like,
Yeah.
I
And
don't
you said
know.
that you said that you expected Josie to have killed Alex's husband, where I didn't think that was gonna happen. Like, oh yeah, I
Mm.
saw that a mile away. And I'm like, oh, okay. Did not go there.
Yeah, so I definitely want to be surprised,
Sure.
and
Same.
I think I'm okay with not relating to the characters because I
Okay.
didn't in this book.
Yeah.
Um, so
And you were okay with
yeah,
creepiness, which I feel like is not generally.
the creepy, it was like a soft level of creepy though. It wasn't like insanely creepy. I was reading this at night, in bed, so
Yes.
I was able to sleep. It was fine.
Okay. Because you were like texting me at the beginning, you were like, wait, is this like scary and horror? And I'm like, no,
I
it's
know. I
not.
did not want it to be. Because it
No.
was like the so detailed at the very beginning of like
Hmm.
what had happened and like this
Yeah.
head popped and it was, oh my
Yeah.
God.
It was very visceral and gory. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
I don't go for
I
generally. So,
see.
okay. Well, now that I have a better sense of what it is you do and don't like about thrillers, I'm gonna keep sending a couple good ones your way and we'll see if I can get another
Hey.
lit it out of you. Okay.
We shall
So
see.
moving on to final recommendations. So, Kelsey, would you recommend this book?
I would. I wouldn't recommend it to maybe people who have lost children. Like
Mm,
that probably wouldn't be very healthy for
mm,
you to engage in, or are really triggered by cheating. Like
mhm.
I otherwise, yeah, I think it was fun and I think it was good.
Yeah, great. I mean, obviously, I would also recommend it. I remember when we read this for book club, we
Uh-huh.
were, some of us were frustrated because on Goodreads, right, it's just like the one rating, right, 1 through 5. And we're like, we wish there was a
Yes.
rating for like entertainment value and then like a rating for writing. Because I would give this, I think I gave it a 4
Uh-huh.
stars. And I only took 1 star because it's like, it's not great writing, but I was like, I don't care. Like, this book was just like really good and really enjoyable. But I do wish
Uh-huh.
there were ways you could like parse out, right?
Yeah,
Your
I hear
ratings
you.
on them places like Goodreads. But overall, I think it's twisty and weird. It'll keep you reading. Like you're not gonna want to
Uh-huh.
put it down. You're gonna have so many questions at the end. You're gonna need to talk to someone about
Uh-huh.
it.
And it's an easy read. It's a
You
really
breeze
easy
right through
read.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long it is, but it's not like
It's like 300
super,
pages.
yeah, it's not
It's
super
not long.
long. And it's definitely what I would call a beach read for sure.
Mm.
Just entertaining and I don't know if fun is the right word, but it'll keep you reading for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do our literally the best and literally the worst. And even though we both like this book, Kelsey's still gonna do the 1 star reviews, and
Yes, they're
I will
quite
do
enjoyable.
the 5 star reviews. So would you like me to start
Yeah,
with
let's
the
start
five
with
star?
fun, good reviews.
Okay, so we're going to kick off with a 5 star review. And again, these are all from Goodreads.
Hmm.
So this first review is from Melissa, and she said, bold, unrelenting, all consuming, creepy, unputdownable. What I've come to appreciate most about Colleen Hoover's work, whether it's an emotionally charged love story or, in this case, her first go at suspense, is her penchant for pushing boundaries, for telling the unexpected story. Hoover preempted Verity's release with a warning of sorts. Although facetious and comical in delivery, it's something sensitive readers should take to heart. This storyline
Mm.
is dark, and the lives of the characters that inhabit the pages are far from perfect. So don't kid yourself into thinking this is something it's not. Verity is horrifying, maddening, and what the hell inducing, but it's
Yes.
also sustenance for that bibliophile looking to satisfy a craving for something different. So I love what Melissa said because I love unexpected. I love
Mm-hmm.
different. I do like dark and twisty, and
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed this book.
Cool. My first one is from Alet from Goodreads, and this
Oh,
is
I
a
saw this
one-star
one.
review. What? You saw this
I
one?
saw
Yeah.
this one.
This was dot 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 stupid. I don't even know how to talk about this. I don't think this is actually mystery thriller. It is just a romance novel with a slightly different plot. Sadly, nothing about this book particularly impressed me or intrigued me. Personally, I do not think that this book is worth the time.
Hmm. Wait, so as you're a romance reader, would you consider this a romance?
No, there are sex scenes in it, but they're
Yeah.
all disturbing. So it's not like a
Yeah.
romance book. It's just like a
No.
creepy, like, yeah, weird sex that like from the point of view of like these characters. So like, right, Verity was just like super obsessed with Jeremy, and that's like what came off in the script, whatever, or the
Mm-hmm.
manuscript. And then equally, oh, this is the other thing I wanted to say though, is that
Yeah, say
there
it.
were like through lines around like how Lowen was becoming Verity, where the
Mm-hmm.
time where she like bit into the
Mm-hmm.
bait, what is it called?
Yeah,
The
the
frame, the bed
headboard.
frame. That is
Yes.
so fucking weird. And she
Yep.
was like, I'm in competition with her
Mm-hmm.
because I'm biting harder. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like the weirdest thing. And then in the end, right, in the epilogue, she's just like trying to combat
Yep.
this feeling of like wanting to compare herself to
Yeah.
Verity.
Yeah.
And in the end, she does become Verity. Like she's Jeremy's partner, and Jeremy is willing to murder people to keep them safe or him safe. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's all kind of fucked up. And then so she now has these ideas and this obsessiveness
Yes.
around sex, and in not in the same way that Verity did, but like
Mm.
still in very intrusive
Yeah.
for her
And
person.
and that's like a through line throughout the epilogue is her constant comparison and
Yeah.
trying to be Verity. It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
Very
But
disturbing.
also like has these straight connections to what Verity wrote down in her manuscript.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 So,
They're all so disturbed.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, your
My
next one.
next 5-star review by Yoon says, how did Colleen Hoover ever think up this dark and twisted tale? It is so unique, so completely shocking that it blows away every other suspense story I've ever read. So many books advertise as suspenseful thrillers, but hardly any of them cause my heart to blip even a little. In parentheses, I know I'm a stone cold reader. But this book, there is such a
Uh,
deliciously creepy atmosphere that permeates
mhm.
throughout, and it got me good. I'll admit to heart palpitations, cold, clammy hands, and being startled at the smallest noises. And as the story progresses and we find out more and more, the tension ratchets up to almost unbearable levels. There was never any hope for me. I was hooked from the very first page. There is a creativity
Ugh.
to the story that makes it hard to look away. I've never read anything like this, not even close. As a result, every page was a surprise, and I just wanted to keep going. And as the truth gets darker and more tortuous, I had no choice but to hold on for the ride of my life. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. You like I've read so
That
many
is too
thrillers,
funny.
and very few of them have stuck with me the way that
Oh, okay.
for sure.
Hmm. I was like, aren't there more out there?
Oh,
Like
there's a lot more, and I've read a lot of them, and some of them have been very good. But I don't know, Verity just like really,
in a different way.
yeah. It
Oh,
just blew me
by the
away.
way, I don't have the book like on me, but I was
Mhm.
curious. It's like in my living room. I should have brought it in here. But on the front cover, do you know what
Mhm.
that is?
I have not looked at the front cover in a very long time.
Okay, it is the fishnet that
Oh,
her
that Harper
daughter.
drowned
Yes.
in.
And
Oh,
so
yes.
there's one on top and one on the
Hmm.
bottom, right? So
Hmm.
it's like there are
Yeah.
there are different stories to it, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
creepy.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Forgot
I
about that.
learned that again from TikTok. Okay. My next one-star review, very short, from Maddie on Goodreads says, I mean, if you like sex scenes drier than a biology textbook, sure, go off, I guess. That's it.
Yeah, this is definitely, if you're looking for smut, this is not the book.
No, it's not.
Definitely not the point of this one, but sure, I'll give her that. Okay, this is my last 5-star one. I think this is like the most entertaining one in terms of how it's written. Okay, this is written by Eamon. I think that's how you say that. Oh my fucking God. I finished this book at 4 a.m. thinking, what the fuck did this author do to me? This shit was brilliant. IDK how to comprehend this. Like, was everyone a victim or a villain? Am I team manuscripts or letters? I don't fucking know. To be honest, only Crew can set us free. He knows the truth. Well, I agree with that. I don't get disturbed easily, but this shook me to the core. I could feel it in my bones. I don't even know how to function and move on with my life. I'm a changed woman. You'll be catching me blankly staring at walls, lost in thought over this book.
I'm a changed woman.
Drama in this. It's so great. And I love that she mentioned Crew because like, yeah, I know we didn't talk about him a ton, but he's a strange little child. And I do think he knows the truth, actually. I actually agree with Eamon. I want to like sit down.
Well, yeah, he was there.
Yeah, like
right?
he saw everything.
Yeah.
And I think because he's a kid, like the adults were like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter if he sees or hears this. So yeah, I think he knows exactly what went down.
No, and I think trauma is dealt with by children in very different ways. I actually wish that would have been really great of her to step into his trauma a little more.
Yeah.
Like it just in like not straightforward ways, but like maybe there was like a weird drawing or things like that. Obviously he bites down on the knife and that's like, what the fuck is wrong with this kid? But that's the only time you really like.
He's weird he does some weird stuff in the epilogue too.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he does. But I would like to read like a little novella from like Crew's point of view.
That would honestly, I feel like that would be the creepiest one.
It would. I would be here for it.
Okay.
Some fan fiction. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Okay, last review by Katya, 1-star review from Goodreads. Some people desperately need Jesus, and Colleen Hoover is one of them. While like I actually think that really fucked up storylines could be easy to make. I don't think it is a reflection on the author.
No. Yeah, agree.
Yeah. I don't know because fucked up shit happens all the time in the world.
And stranger than fiction.
Open to all of those things or like see all of those things. And so I don't know. I don't think it would be that hard to write like a fucked up.
I don't think so either.
Story.
I think the thing that, and we talked about this, and none of this is true. I think the challenge that thriller writers face is like they constantly have to be doing the new and the unexpected and the thrilling and the shocking because that's their bread and butter and that's what gets people talking about their work. So I think, especially after doing, I know this is her first thriller that she wrote, but like you got to come out swinging in order to like get people
dive into that
people's attention. So I think she did it brilliantly in this book. So 5 stars to Colleen Hoover for this brilliant thriller that she has given us.
Nice. It's funny. We are not like Colleen Hoover enthusiasts. We just happen to read 2 of her books so far.
Yes. And this one, I mean, I liked both of her books and I actually think she's a pretty good writer. I just, with everything going on post It Ends With Us, I have feelings. And if you haven't listened to our bonus Lit Scripts episode in September, you should go back and check that out because we have other things to say about Colleen.
So I think that wraps it up
our
for
time.
us.
That is our time. I'm going to be really mindful of not going awesome.
Wow.
That's all. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you have strong thoughts, feelings, opinions about this book, if you are team manuscripts or team letters, please let us know. Comment on this episode if you're listening on Spotify. And if you're not, hop on our socials, DM us. We want to have a conversation. We want to have a chat with you. Do you want to do the recap for socials for folks, Kelsey?
Yeah, happily. So find us on Instagram at litvibesonly_podcast and on TikTok and YouTube at litvibesonly podcast. And our full episodes are up on YouTube and we do some different content on TikTok because, the algorithm is different on TikTok versus Instagram. And so we mix it up a little bit for the 2 platforms.
Come check us out on both.
Yeah. So
come say hey.
Love to hear from you.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next
Okay.
Monday.
See you on Monday. Bye.